Well, welcome everyone to today's Friday call to Advanced Core and Electives Training. I am your facilitator today, Commander Angie. Very excited to be on this call with you today because we have Mary Onschwitz. She is one of our leading coaches here with Fortune Builders. I'm sure many of you on this call know exactly who she is. You probably have either met her at a boot camp, you have had a coaching call with her, whatever the case may be. We just absolutely love her, and I'm very excited to have her on this call today to talk about private lending, the do's and don'ts, and getting really involved with private lending. How many of you on this call have had Mary as a coach? There's quite a few of you on this call, and I want to get a good, oh wow, okay, there's a few hands popping up here letting me know that they've had a call with Mary or either met Mary. There's some comments coming in. Hey, Mary. All right, awesome. Well, that is who we have on this call today. Before we bring Mary onto this call, as you know, we love going over those guidelines and reminders. They're so repetitive, but they're good for us to know, okay? So before we came on, we have checked our internet connection, and right now, everything is fabulous. We could hear each other. We checked our screens. Everything is good. So please, if we're coming across choppy or anything on your end, double check your internet connection. Make sure we're good and coming through. If you've got a bad connection and or you need to leave us early due to your schedules, no worries. We are recording this call, and it will be posted on the online training site within 48 hours or less. Now, after Mary presents on private lending, be sure to use that question box. Now, you can use that question box for questions. We're going to save questions towards the end of the presentation. You can also use that to communicate with me behind scenes if you're having difficulties or we want to make sure it's not coming from our end. So definitely communicate with us that way. Today's call for your schedule is approximately 60 minutes. I put the approximately in there just because we do like to hang around and make sure we answer all your questions, but the main presentation should be completed within 60 minutes or less. We also have the Boot Camp Summit coming up in Chicago. So I'm going to put those hands down really quickly. Now, go ahead. I want to know how many of you are we going to see there? Who's coming to Chicago? Who are we going to see in Chicago? Awesome. So we got some hands coming up. Jessica, Renell, Keith, David, two Keith is there, a couple of Michaels, Sandy. Good, good. Well, I look forward to seeing you guys there at these boot camps. Really love these boot camps. Great time to rub shoulders and on top of that, just learn some really good in-depth information. You know, many people learn by applying and just being there and all that kind of stuff. And today's training really kicks off the fact, or one of the main reasons why we go to these boot camps. I have met so many private lenders available at these boot camps. So remember, for those of you on this call, not everyone joins Mastery to flip houses, okay? There's a lot of people that join Mastery because they want to lend their private funds to individuals who are learning to do the business right. And so that is why we have Mary on today's call. That is why we have these boot camps. It is definitely a great way for us to connect and to get to know each other. Now, I'm going to bring Mary up. This is the highlight of today's training, the do's and don'ts of being a private lender. Mary is going to talk about how to earn money effortlessly. That's the point, right? We're lending our money and it's making a large return better than any bank can provide. And then how to control your retirement funds. And what I mean by that, and many of you have learned, that you can self-direct your IRA and control that. And a lot of investors do that. She's going to talk about the process and much, much more. Mary, are you on the call with me?
I am.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so Mary, I am going to go ahead and pass controls on over to you. I'll let you know when I see your screen, and then I'll let you take it away. All right, there you are, Mary. Go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks, Angela. Happy Friday to everyone. And Angela, you brought up a couple really good points, because when we joined Fortune Builders, which was about 3¼ years ago, we really didn't know anything about private money lending, and it wasn't even on our radar screen. So when we join Fortune Builders, we join with the intent of doing rehabs and supplementing income that way, creating a different lifestyle for ourselves. And a couple months into this journey, and I do say it's a journey because there are twists and turns to this, we were introduced to the whole private money lending concept, and we totally bought into the concept of using our self-directed IRAs, or moving our IRAs to self-directed IRAs and using those to earn at a higher rate than we ever thought possible. And both of those concepts were foreign to us until we joined Fortune Builders. And when we learned about this and we figured out what we could do, my husband looked at me and he said, "Why weren't we doing this 10 years ago?" And I said, "We didn't know." So the beautiful thing about the Fortune Builders systems and the opportunity with real estate is it can take many different paths. And for us, we're going down several different paths at one time so that we can create the flexibility that we want while we support these two 16-year-old twin daughters who have a tendency to burn through a lot of money with their activities, etc., as all of you know who have children. So let's get started, and I think this is going to take about 20-25 minutes. We'll have a lot of time for questions at the end. So please do chime in with your questions because this is what it's for. It's for you to learn. And this is very much of an overview of the advantages of private money lending. I'll talk about some of the due diligence you can do to mitigate risk because nothing is risk-free. And then we'll touch on the documents that are needed. So some of the advantages of private money lending is you earn money while other people are doing the work. Because when you're a private money lender, most times you are a silent partner. You're not managing a project, you're not making decisions. You're very much in the background going on with your life while other people are churning through the projects and delivering interest or equity back to you at the end. So you aren't doing the work, someone else is. If you are investing with the right people, you can be generating higher and steadier returns. So if you are using your money, private money lending, you can pretty much chart out what your returns are going to be because typically you're lending at a set interest rate. You can't do that with many other investments, especially something like stocks because they're bouncing up and down literally every minute. So this is a way where you can start to chart how much you can earn and what your returns will be. Another advantage of private money lending is you have collateral. A collateral is a deed of trust. It's that house. It's that piece of property. You are in first position. If anything goes wrong, you have the ability to go get that property. So again, oftentimes with investments, there's not something backing them up, but with private money lending, you've got this awesome piece of collateral, so it makes it more secure. Now I touched a little bit on taking control of your retirement funds. Before we joined Fortune Builders, we had IRAs, but we didn't know about self-directed IRAs. We didn't even know they existed. So we quickly moved all our money over and started taking control of it. And so we have a plan for how fast we want to grow that money over time. And if you look at compound interest, and you can go get a compound interest calculator on anywhere and say, okay, let's say you start out with X amount of money and you're going to earn 12% or 14% a year, that really adds up. And this is one of the very few ways that you can have calculated growth like that. A huge advantage of private money lending is we help keep residential redevelopers projects moving. Because how many people do you know who are doing fix and flips and rehabs who need money? They don't always want to go to a hard money lender. They can't get money from a bank. So private money lending can be a very quick and easy way for them to be able to get projects and keep them going. So we're part of that engine that keeps this whole process moving. And finally, when you're doing private money lending, as a lender, you are negotiating the terms directly with the borrower. There's no one else involved. It's you and the borrower. So the terms become whatever you negotiate. You're not subject to other people. You're not subject to outside influences telling you what you have to do. So we really like that aspect of it. Here's a chart. I like visual things, so we made this little chart. I mentioned that being a private money lender is part of what keeps the rehab or residential redevelopment engine moving. And the reason you want to be a private money lender is if you compare how your money earns, the collateral that you have, and the potential for higher returns, if you compare that to putting it in the stock market, putting it in the bank at less than 1%, or putting it under the mattress at 0%, you have a lot more control and a much greater ability to have those higher returns and have it be backed by collateral. So you like to use these little happy faces because there really is a huge difference. And so also if someone is, you can flip this around. Okay, let's say you want to go find private money. I mean, these are the same points that you make to someone for why they should invest with you. So now when you're on the other side, this is why you want to invest. So now we're going to go through a couple examples. These are all real live examples. There's some good news, there's some bad news, and there's some great news. So it comes with a business. I mentioned this isn't risk-free. We've learned along the way a few painful lessons, but you just keep going on because you have a lot of control over what you do, and a lot of planning on the front end, just like the rehab, helps to make these things more successful. So one point that sometimes people have a hard time with, you want that rehabber or residential redeveloper to be really profitable. And the reason you want them to be profitable is because you always want them to be comfortable paying you, whatever it is they owe you. If their deal is too skinny and they can barely pay you, that doesn't keep them motivated and keep them moving on. Because ideally, you find a couple people who are really good at this. They're really good at running projects. They're good at finding projects. They're good at doing the projects, and they're good at selling them. Because that way, you can keep reinvesting your money over and over with these same people, and it can be a wonderful relationship. But if they are always just barely scraping by, then that's not great. You want them to be making a lot of money because you want to be happy and you want them to be happy. So the first example, this is a textbook example of really perfectly how everything worked to a T. And this happened to be the first one we did. And it was really odd, but this very first example happened to be with someone who was purchasing the house literally a half a mile from us in our neighborhood. So we knew the house, we knew the neighborhood. We used our self-directed IRA. It was 6 months, and there were 10% interest payments made monthly. So you can see down in the left, our IRA company, we would get every month on the dot, we'd get this little email and this deposit was being made. And that's a wonderful thing. When you're off doing all sorts of other things, maybe you're working on a rehab, maybe you're working at a job, maybe you're on vacation, and you get these deposit receipts. It definitely makes you smile. And then at the end of the 6-month term, they paid what was owed, and we both walked away happy. It was perfect. Another example, this didn't go quite as planned. This one, we used money from a line of credit, and the agreement was for 6 months, and the borrower would pay us 16% interest in a balloon at the end. Now, you can already see a difference in these two. One was self-directed IRA, one's a line of credit. The other thing is one was 10% interest, this one was 16% interest. Remember, it's all what you negotiate. And on this one, it's a higher interest rate, and we opted to let them pay it in a balloon at the end. Because again, that's what we agreed to on the front end. This happened to be a really hot market. However, this house had some structural issues, and we knew that going in. We were okay with it, but the structural issues ended up being way more than this rehabber was expecting. And this rehabber is a very experienced rehabber. He's done hundreds of houses, and he knows the game. It took just a little bit longer, so we gave him an extension because we agreed to that. He lost money on this house, but he paid us the contractual interest rate. He knows that he agreed to this. He knew he was going to come back and ask us for money, and we were good lenders, and he liked working with us, and he knew the right thing to do was, even though he lost money, he needed to pay us what was owed us. And I've heard some of the owners and the upper managers of Fortune Builders talk about times when they've lost money on a deal, that they did everything they could to pay back that borrower because it's reputation, it's trust, and that's what they agreed to. So as a private money lender, we were happy. The rehabber wasn't so happy, but hey, that was part of it. He just moved on to the next couple projects he had going. Another one, this we borrowed, or we used self-directed IRA money. The agreement here was 10% interest plus 50% equity. And that came in a balloon at the end, and this was supposed to be a 9-month term. So here again is a different structure. So there are all sorts of structures you can have in terms of interest rate and equity when you're doing this private money lending. This was a disaster from the beginning. They went really long on this project. Now, we, for a number of reasons, absolutely did not want to own this house. So we never started talking about deed in lieu of foreclosure. We never talked about foreclosure because in this situation, it was more beneficial to us to extend the time and agree on a lower payout. So we are getting paid out. They did sell the house. We did make money on it. We didn't make as much as we thought, but this guy lost a lot. But he did pay us. So again, you can determine how you're going to respond in a situation like this. And in this situation, we decided that extending and taking less money was the right way to go and the best way to go. All right, this one. Okay, if you look over at the right, I'm screaming here. So here's another one that didn't go as planned. So we used money from a self-directed IRA, 12% interest. It was supposed to be a 9-month term. This was a scrape-in build. So there was an old house that was scraped. This new build went up. It took forever. This guy really ended up not knowing how to manage the project. And this is a hot neighborhood in a hot market, and he never should have gotten into this situation. So you can see there are 3 pieces of paper on that front door. That's where we started foreclosure. So those are the foreclosure notices. At the end of the day, well, in between the, well, after we filed foreclosure, he filed bankruptcy, which stopped the foreclosure. Then he pulled out of the bankruptcy, and then in this case, we did decide on a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and we were supposed to sell this today. It's gotten pushed back a week. We are going to take a loss on this one. A lot of you are going to say, why didn't you just take it over and finish it? This is one of the rare projects where we had another partner, and he was a majority interest partner. He's got 55% of the money into this. We have 45. He was not going to finish it. There's no way we were going to buy him out because we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars here and then put another 100 to 125 into it and finish it. We made the call. We did the math. We just needed to get out of this one. Now, always end with a good story because we've got many more good stories than we have bad stories. And we've done at least 25 of these. So here's a story. Again, hot market. We used the money from a line of credit, 16% interest in a balloon. 6-month term. This guy got in. He got out. In less than 6 months, he made $20,000 more than he originally planned. We get contractually what was owed to us. He walks away with 20 grand more, actually more than that because he got done faster than he ever expected. You know what? We were thrilled for him. Great. Keep going. What's the next house we can invest in? Because textbook is great when everyone earns exactly what they want. This is even better when he earns more than what he was expecting. So it can be easy to maybe be a little envious and a little jealous and think, well, gosh, maybe he should pay us some of that extra. That's not what you agreed to. So just sit with the agreement and be happy that they rocked. Because then they're going to come back and borrow more money from you. And what a great way to go. So due diligence. Just as you are doing a rehab project, you do due diligence on general contractors and other people you're using. Same thing goes here. You can mitigate your risk when you lend money to someone by doing due diligence with them. Ask for proof of past projects. Go visit some of their active sites. Does it look like it's going well? Do people know what they're doing? Is there trash all over? Are people late? Are they not showing up? Talk to references. It's the same kind of due diligence. So make sure these folks know what they're doing and that they've got a plan. They have a scope of work. Their rehab budget looks reasonable. They've got comps. It's the same information you would use as if you were vetting a rehab deal yourself. You do use documents, and we're going to go through those in a second, but have an attorney on hand to review the documents to make sure that you've covered the most important points. One thing we learned on that one where I was screening is check to see if this person has ever had an issue with foreclosure before. Shame on us, this guy had actually foreclosed before. Right, we own this problem. Right? We didn't do enough due diligence. So shame on us. Won't do that again. We learned, we pick up, we just keep moving forward. Do be familiar with the foreclosure process in different states because again, these projects that I showed you are in several different states. Foreclosure processes are different in different states. So that's why on some projects we will absolutely try to work out maybe a little bit of a lower payment, or we'll work out extra time, but you're still going to pay us instead of even talking about foreclosure. So just have a general awareness. Mitigate risk by asking all the questions, visiting the sites, talking to references, and definitely having an attorney on board. Now, some people get surprised when I start talking about private money and I talk about the deal analyzer. Like, well, why do you need that? I cannot stress enough how important Deal Analyzer is. This is, I think, the single best tool that Fortune Builders provides to us. When someone comes to us with a deal, the first thing we do is plug in the numbers, just as if we were doing a rehab ourselves. I mean, they're telling us what the ARV is. Well, we vet that ourselves. We do some due diligence to say, hey, do we agree with that? We look at the estimated repair costs because everyone on this call has the ability to come up with rough repair costs and see and know what they provided to you. Does that look reasonable? And they're going to tell you what the purchase price is. You know what the property taxes are because you can look them up or they'll tell you. And then since you're the lender, you plug in what the mortgage rates are going to be, depending on how much you're going to lend to them. And then look at the estimated net profit. Why? Because you want it to be a healthy deal. You want that person to make money. People will come to us and ask us for a private money loan, and if we plug these numbers in and we say, no way, it is too skinny, and we won't do it, and we'll tell them why. We'll say, you are projected to make $10,000 on this deal. You have a hiccup, you're not going to make any. We're not going to put our money into a project that's skinny. So this deal analyzer is a huge part of doing your due diligence. The other thing is, rarely do you ever want to loan more than 65% of the after repair value, because that gives you a little bit of latitude for a mistake to happen or for something to take a little bit of extra time and there to be extra holding costs. So that's another calculation you want to keep. This is a huge piece of your risk mitigation right here, and that's a tool you should be using every day. In terms of documents needed, promissory note, I'm going to come back to that in a second, but the deed of trust, when someone buys a house, you get a deed of, they hand that deed of trust to you if you're the borrower or if you're the lender, because that's the collateral. So if you lend money to someone, you're going to get that deed of trust, and you're going to hang on to it until they get ready to pay you back, and then you're going to release it. Insurance, as a lender, you're always listed as an additional insured. That way, if the house burns down, you can get paid out first. You may want some additional documents. Again, that's where your attorney comes in. Also, different states have different laws and rules for what interest rates can be charged. So in some places, you could charge 35%. In other places, you can only charge 10%. So those are the usury rates. Be aware of what they are for the states where you're going to lend. The other thing we learned the hard way was a personal guarantee. The way you make a personal guarantee varies from state to state, and I had no idea that that was even possible. I thought a personal guarantee was a personal guarantee. And come to find out, if you ask an attorney what a personal guarantee means, because we thought we were getting a personal guarantee from someone in another state, and it turns out in that state, and he signed his name as a personal guarantor of this loan. What we found out a little too late is in that state, for someone to make a personal guarantee, if they have a spouse, their spouse also has to sign. And we had no idea. So he basically took advantage of our lack of due diligence in that area. So when you're private money lending, it's up to you whether or not you want to ask for a personal guarantee. You don't have to. Some people do, some people don't. It's totally up to you. Oftentimes when you're private money lending, the property itself is the only collateral you use. But I just wanted to bring that up, and that, again, is why you want that attorney review. Okay, promissory note, that's the key document. There's an example of this on the Mastery site, so you can use that. Again, have an attorney review. This is where you put all the terms. What are you agreeing to? How much are you loaning? When is it due? What's the interest rate? The payment schedule, are they paying monthly or are they paying in a balloon at the end? One of these examples talked about an equity split. If there's an equity split, what is it? And one of the biggest things we always do is plan for a problem at the end. So what if someone needs an extension? So we all know when we're doing rehabs that sometimes things just don't go as planned. There's a storm, cabinets don't come in, if someone doesn't show up, who knows what. But sometimes people need an extension. So write into the note what happens if an extension is needed. Does the interest rate stay the same? Do they have to pay an extra point? Does the interest rate go up for that extension? What is it? And then consult with your attorney, because if you have an extension, you may want to file that document again with the county to make sure it's on record that there's an extension. Not difficult to do, just a checklist item that an attorney can help with. or you can do it yourself, but it's just keeping everything on record. So the systems, again, you have them all to be able to do this. The deal analyzer is that key piece so you can vet the deal yourself to see if there's enough in it for you to be comfortable loaning on the project. The rehab estimator, you have basic knowledge about what a rehab takes and roughly what things should cost. So when they submit to you a rehab estimate, does it look reasonable? Are they missing something major? You can have that discussion with them. You have the discussion with them on the front end, not in the middle of it. And then the documents for the private money lending, a deed of trust, a promissory note, those are all on the Mastery sites for you to familiarize yourself with. So summarizing, private money lending allows you to invest in real estate in a different way other than running a rehab yourself or doing wholesales. Now you can be doing them all at the same time, and maybe you don't want to be running a rehab. Take this knowledge and do lending with it. You can calculate and chart your returns to a really good degree. And sometimes other people are better at finding deals. Or it allows you to invest in additional markets. So you can also spread your risk by investing in several markets at one time, and this is a great way to do it. Fortune Builders in the very basic mastery training gives you the resources to be able to identify good lending opportunities and to minimize your risk. Use the resources. And the other thing that gave my husband and me great excitement and encouragement and allowed us to relax just a little bit is this is something you can do at any age as long as you want. So for us, not only can we take our IRAs right now and actively grow them at a really great rate, even with a few bumps in the road, but we can, this is a way for us to earn long into retirement. And we didn't even know that existed. So again, this is something you can do when it doesn't matter where you are. And for example, we were on vacation in Wisconsin, visiting my parents over the 4th of July, and there was a private money lending deal we had. It wasn't one of the examples I showed, but we had $50,000 dump into our checking account while we were on vacation. Happy day. So it's a flexible way and really a great way to be involved in real estate. That is all I have. So let's go to the questions.
All right, Mary, thank you so much. Truly appreciate your time today. This has been an awesome training, and it's a good reminder of, you know, the things that are available to us within Mastery, and just understanding that, hello, yes, we do have individuals within Mastery who are open for it and ready and willing to lend. So, you know, that's the whole reason of rubbing shoulders. I've got Michael up on here. Michael says, I have money in a self-directed IRA and want to start lending. I am also considering entering into a joint venture with another investor. Could I be a private money lender for this project? Michael, is it a specific project? Are you talking about one that is already happening? Could you give me a little bit more detail on that? But yeah, you can use your self-directed IRA to lend on any deal as long as you do your due diligence. But give a little bit more. Oh, here we go. He's chiming in. A deal we are considering. Okay, yeah. So you can be a private lender, definitely even on your own deal. Absolutely, you can. Hopefully that's what you're asking, right, Michael? Let's see. Sandy, do you do gap funding secondary, and how would that be handled differently? Mary.
So you can do gap funding, and then that means you're in second position. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So generally you want to be in first position, because then if something goes south, you're the first one to get paid out on macro level terms. on rare occasions, we have done gap funding, but the only reason we did it is because it was a small amount and the deal analyzer showed us that it was a really healthy deal and that even if there were problems, there was a really high degree of certainty that we would get paid out without problems.
Yeah,
So,
again, it's, sorry.
Yeah, it's a due diligence. And then the other thing is, it's a bit of a personal preference, but if we're going to be in second position, we're not going to do that at 8% interest because it's higher risk. So it's going to be a higher interest rate because we are taking a higher risk. And usually if someone needs gap funding, especially if it's in the middle of a project, they're willing to pay a little bit more because they really need it.
Yeah, and I mean, you could unfortunately take advantage of those kind of situations, but again, as Mary says, always doing your due diligence is number one. I mean, we've even had to have gap funding one time, and we ended up paying the individual 15%, but it was worth it. The deal was extremely healthy. It was a small amount, and definitely worth it. Good question, Sandy. Let's see, Woodley, how do you find out the borrower's foreclosure history? Good question. Mary, do you want me to take that, or?
Well, I'll start and then you can fill in. So it can be tricky because it depends how they ran, how they were running projects before, if they were running under their personal name or under an LLC. So you can search their personal name, and then you can always ask, and hopefully they'll be honest with you, what other business entities have you run under?
Absolutely.
And you can and search on county records. So
yeah.
That's where, yeah, so it's the county records.
Absolutely. So remember, everyone on this call, when you face foreclosure, when you actually have a foreclosure happen on you, that becomes public record. And it really depends on where you're at. Normally you can find that information right at the courthouse because that's where a lot of stuff is taken care of. So just you could learn the process that way, but again, it really depends on where you're located and how you're going to find that information. What is it for Wisconsin?
Well, I'm in Denver now.
Oh, you're in Denver.
But,
okay.
Yep. And we can just go on county websites and you can search. So you can see a lot on county websites here in Colorado.
Awesome. Good deal. So it should be pretty easy. It is a public record. Josephine is asking, we are about to start in real estate. What are your requirements to secure from private money lender?
So on the macro level terms, and then Angela's going to follow up, but on macro level terms, we'll look at, well, one, again, we won't fund more than 65% of an after repair value. And typically we only fund people who have a track record because we need the recommendations to make sure that they know what they're doing and they're scoping stuff out right. Because when you lend, hopefully you're never taking over a project. But in the back of your mind, you kind of have to realize that at some point you might have to have some involvement. And then Angela?
Yeah, absolutely. And then for those of you who you know, are thinking, well, shoot, I want to, you know, lend or whatever the case may be, we do have a policy here within Fortune Builders that you do have to be a student for a year before you can get involved with any projects with coaches. Okay, so if you want to get in projects with coaches, lend, or vice versa, and it does happen, however, you have to be a student for at least 1 year, and then you'll sign a disclaimer and everything else. So that's how you do that within the community. If it's student to student, you're at your own risk, so do your due diligence. Okay, and then Josephina's also wants to know, do you have to be registered as a business to do private money lending? No, you do not. You do not have to do that to private lend. Let's see, Renee, if you have money to lend out, want to be able to access it once the deal is over, is it better to lend them an LLC or your personal account? I assume not from self-directed IRA. You want to take that, Mary?
Yes. So you're, okay, right, good point. If you are using a self-directed IRA, all proceeds have to go back to that self-directed IRA. So if you want to be able to use the proceeds, you have to use money outside a self-directed IRA.
Absolutely. You can't get the interest that you earned and use that for your own personal gain with self-directed IRA. Everything goes back into the IRA. And you guys, I'll be honest, and Mary may agree with me too, I love private lenders that use their self-directed IRA. And the reason is because in a sense, I don't have to worry about that lender coming to me in the middle of my rehab and going, you know, I kind of need my money back early. Because with the self-directed IRA, you have a note, you have terms, you follow that note and terms, and everything goes back to the self-directed IRA, and you can't pull out of it anyways until what, 59. So I don't know, that's my preference. I always make sure, or I always enjoy working with private lenders who have a self-directed IRA. What's your comment on that, Mary?
I agree with that, because when it is in a self-directed IRA, there's a little bit more flexibility because, yeah, you're right, you can't use that money. So you make decisions a little differently, and there is a little bit more latitude.
Yeah. All right, so hopefully that answered your question, Renee. Moving on to Keith. Keith, would you agree that for a lower interest and lower risk that investing with Grand Coast Capital is a way to go if you are an accredited investor? My personal opinion is yes. We do projects with them as well, and they are extremely diligent in their due diligence with other people's money. So yeah, that is an option. Mary, have you had an experience with Grand Coast Capital?
We are not actively involved with Grand Coast right now, and we will down the road, and I think they are, and here's the advantage of Grand Coast. You put your money in Grand Coast and you park it for a while. So you really truly do forget about it.
Yeah.
The projects that I was talking about, you do have to stay on top of them, and we're constantly churning them. That's what we're doing right now because we're 100% into real estate investing. We have the time and ability to do it.
Right.
But there will come a time when we don't want to do that. So then, yes, we will take and park our money in a Grand Coast fund. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you have to remember too, to invest with Grand Coast Capital, there are certain limitations. So do keep that in mind. You may want to reach out to them and find out what that is, and make sure that you have the capital in order to invest with them. And they're very, very thorough, which I truly love. I've learned a thing or two with Grand Coast Capital in our own private lending adventures as well. So. Okay, Sandy is asking, what is the borrower supposed to provide for paying the interest? Is it a INT 1099? Does it matter if you are using IRA, 401k dollars, etc.?
That's a good question. So they should do a W-9, so you can then, I mean, they should be reporting it themselves. But you can work with the CPA so that you have the documentation the correct way. So ask your CPA, because we rely heavily on our guy Dan to help us. But yes, you have to report it, and they should be reporting it.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I'm just piggyback on what you're saying, Mary, that it's, so when you start working with a private lender who's just using their own funds, yeah, 1099. So it's not a really hard document to fill out because all you're putting in there is the interest that they've earned, and you're giving it to them before January 31st of the year. So just somehow make or create a process for it. But if you're working with an individual, and this is what makes life easy, again, working with self-directed IRAs. If you have a self-directed IRA, or you're working with an individual who has a self-directed IRA, their custodian is the one that is responsible for handling all of that. Mary, I'm sure the company you use for your self-directed IRA, they take care of that for you, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, great question, Sandy. All right, that looks like it is it for questions. Just take a moment. If you have any more coming up, I'm going to go ahead and swap screens on over really quickly just to get my my screen back up here for everyone.